Call to order the February 2012 legislative session of Media Borough Council. Before we salute the flag, I will announce that before tonight's meeting, we had an executive session. We met an executive session concerning a personnel matter and a litigation matter. That having been said, let us please all rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome all. Our first item of business is approval of the minutes. We have 3 groups of minutes to approve. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the January 3, 2012 reorganization meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes, and those minutes are approved. Thank you, Mr. Smith. The second set of minutes is from the January 5, 2012 workshop meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the matter? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. And the last set of minutes to approve is that of the January 19, 2012 council meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the January 19, 2012 council meeting minutes?
So moved.
We had competing motions, but
Second.
here we go. And is there any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any call for discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, that having been gotten out of the way, and I assure everyone out there that this is sort of an exceptional matter. Normally we don't approve 3 groups of minutes, but because of the changeover in council this past January, we have a few more meetings than we normally do. But now it's time for public comment and privilege of the floor. All those who wish to address council, please come forward and identify yourself by name and by your address. And if you have any questions, please address them to the chair. Ms. Rowland, there is an exception.
I just have one question. Whatever happened to the hotel?
Ms. Rowland's question is, whatever happened to the hotel? By that, I take it you mean the Hampton Inn.
Uh-huh.
All right, we have some information about that. And I believe that Mr. Smith probably has the most detailed information. But my understanding is that we're looking at this spring, sometime this spring for groundbreaking. Is that correct, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I'll look over to the engineer because after council approves the plans, he starts to get involved as well. But my understanding is that they will be submitting building permit applications at some point this spring, and as well as a demolition permit, and that they continue to seek the approvals that they need from the County Conservation District and other entities at this time. But as I said, I will look over to the borough engineer at this time.
Thank you. I believe remaining there's some small drafting paperwork items. I'm not sure if the agreements have been signed, but outside of that, there's council has done the approvals and they're again moving forward with completing the project or starting the project.
All right, I'm not going to hold you to a date, but any ideas when it is that might see some groundbreaking over there?
No, I do not know. That probably was something that they would contact Mr. Smith before myself.
All right, fair enough. Are you satisfied, Ms. Rowland? Excellent. Anyone else who wishes to come forward and address council? Ms. Gaborio.
Hi, Stephanie Florio at Parks Edge Lane, and I'm the chair of Friends of Glen Providence Park, but I wanted to announce something that the county's doing. Next week they're having a kickoff meeting they're doing a Delaware County Open Space Recreation and Greenway Plan. It's a 3-year process. They have a grant to do site development drawings for 6 of the county-owned parks. Glen Providence Park is one of them, along with Rose Tree, Smedley, Clayton, Kent, and Upland Parks. They are really actively seeking public participation. They really want the public's ideas, comments, thoughts about the use of these, not only the parks, but open spaces within the county and developing greenways. And so there's 2 meetings next week. One's 4 p.m., 4 to 6 in Springfield, 7 to 9 at the Government Center and Media. So that's next Thursday, and I think if you just Google Delaware County Open Space Plan, you'll find it. If you have any trouble finding it by doing that, there is information on our website. easier to list than theirs. So our website is glenprovidencepark.org. And I don't know, Mr. Robinson, are you going to announce the public meeting that's upcoming for that the Citizens Advisory Committee is doing when you?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I won't go
But you
into
can do
that.
it again, we can do it twice.
Okay, well, so March 5th, I'll let, give more detail, but March 5th, the Citizens Advisory Committee, which Borough Council appointed to look into the 3rd Street Bridge matter, they will be having a public meeting on March 5th, which I believe is a Monday night. And once again, they're very actively, interested in the public's thoughts about the project. So,
That's right here in the Borough Complex.
yes. So that's it. Thanks very much. Oh, and I do have extra copies if anybody's interested of the county's flyer.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to come forward and address council at this time? All right, well then, since there's no one else wishes to appear before us at this time, let's move into the reports. The engineer report, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much. Summary for the month of January 2012. Road resurfacing, Joseph Sucre completed the contract. We're in the process of getting all the necessary remaining paperwork and documents completed into the borough so we can finalize that. Near and dear to a lot of people's hearts are the Baltimore Pike traffic improvements, the CMAC. Been in touch with PennDOT and various communications and with Mr. Smith. We're going to set up shortly to do a preliminary list of items that are not completed and turn that over to the PennDOT representative. This is at the request of PennDOT, hoping to get that scheduled for next week to get that started. Outside of that, the last thing is a miscellaneous one that I discussed at the workshop was about the Little Washington wastewater smoke testing report that took place here in the section of the borough. And in particular, there were, I believe, 6 inlets that had smoke coming out of it. And per Aqua, they believe these are cross-connected between the sanitary sewers and the storm sewers. I haven't heard anything more from Aqua. They're still in the process of getting together some of their information, and then when they do, they will forward it to the borough, either to Mr. Smith or myself, and we'll make sure council gets a copy.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Does anyone have any questions for the engineer?
Mr. Johnson, did Aqua give you any idea of how long it would take them to get back to you on that information? Did they give you a timeline of when they would get back the results?
Well, no. What I've asked them to do, part of this was, they showed pictures of smoke coming out the inlets. I did request to see if they could get some television to confirm that it's actually the storm sewer connected to the sanitary, and they weren't in this, in the sanitary. It's connected to the storm. They were also going to do a PennDOT search for some documents to see if we could identify if the inlets were PennDOT owned and maintained, or in 3 cases.
But they didn't tell you when they'd get back to you?
No, they did not.
Okay, thank you.
And, just real quick, did we get a geographic map of showing where the issues are for the residents in case they want to know where?
That was included in the report.
Okay. This one be close, Jeff? That residents care about where the issues are?
No, there's photos in the report that indicate where the location
Right, I was
is.
suggesting that maybe if the residents care about whether or not there's sewer water going in their sanitary line, water, that they might want to know that in their neighborhood. So,
So you're making a request that the borough manager post those on the borough website?
correct.
All right. Mr. Smith, do you see any reason why we cannot do that?
No, if there's no objections from the solicitor, engineer, council, we'd be more than happy to do it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any questions for the borough engineer? I have a quick question for you, Mr. Johnson, just as a point of clarification. You mentioned the CMAC project, that's the lighting and signage along Baltimore Avenue, and much of that appears to be done, and it's wonderful that we now have the countdown signal for pedestrians, and we have these larger signs. So is the traffic signalage actually up and running yet?
One of the main components is still not completed, is the system needs to be connected to a computer within Borough Hall. That is not done.
Okay. And that's something that is a matter that has to be worked out with PennDOT and its contractors?
Correct, because this is a contract between PennDOT and Miller Brothers.
Okay, all right, I think there's some people in the borough who think that the lighting is already in sequence, but it's not there yet.
No, it's not,
Okay,
not there.
all right, good. All right, unless anyone else has any questions for the borough engineer, we'll turn to the borough solicitor and ask for his report.
Thank you, I do not have a report tonight.
I guess that means it's up to the mayor now to give us his report.
Thank you, Brian. Let's see, for the month of January, we had 764 complaints. It says complaints, but it's actually incidents, et cetera. There were no burglaries during the month of January, and there were a total of 58 traffic details conducted throughout the borough during that month. One other announcement, on March 24th, there will be the annual media NAACP luncheon. It's going to be at the Oaks Ballroom in Glen Alden. Special guest this year will be the Tuskegee Airmen, and I understand that most of the remaining Tuskegee Airmen in this area will be there. They travel, there's 5 or 6 that travel a lot. But they will be there, so please get your tickets. Tickets are $45, $25 for children. It's in the Oaks Ballroom because it's a huge crowd, and they just couldn't get a date from the media, otherwise it would be here. So that's why it's there, but it is the media NAACP, so it's supported if you're able. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does anyone have any questions of the mayor or any comments? I do have a comment. The mayor happens to be a modest man, although he'd probably say that he has plentiful reasons to be modest, but that's just who he is. But I did see that you were profiled in the Media Town Talk, and if anyone has not read it yet, you should take the time to read this article. We have a wonderful man who serves as mayor, who has very interesting stories to tell. And that article does explain, or does begin to tell that story.
Can I make one comment? There's a picture of me with a flag, and it says a Vietnamese flag. It happens to be a Viet Cong flag that we're holding, which was who we were supposedly against. And it was one that we had captured that day, so we were showing it off. But the caption said it's a Vietnam flag, so I'm afraid that some of my friends are going to call me and say, "What are you doing standing there with this flag?" So I just wanted to mention that. That's all.
And just one other observation about the mayor. Today it marks almost to the day the 20th anniversary of your service to this borough as mayor. You've told me that your first day of service as borough in this mayor was February 18, 1992. We are 2 days short of that. And every day is special in its own way. I guess we looked at that way, why is one day more special than the other? But I think that it's important that we recognize milestones. And 7,300 days service as mayor, 20 years. Yes, those are milestones. But I think that that should be recognized. And I know that you're too modest a man at times.
I'm not that modest.
Okay. I'm just feeding you the lines here, Bob, and you're hitting them on the park.
You just didn't remember.
But on behalf of council and on behalf of media, thank you for your service. And we look forward to many more years of your service.
Thank you, Brian. I've managed to make no enemies.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions or points of discussion for the mayor? Let us then get into the committee reports. There are Councilman Davidson, Finance, Personnel, and Library.
Thank you, President Hall. Finance, the Finance Committee recommends payment of bills for January in the amounts of $402,933.23 from the General Fund, $2,045.85 from the Recreation Fund, $0 from Liquid Fuels Fund, and $32,793.82 from the Capital Fund, a total of I'll get this right one of these months. $437,772.90. Finance Committee recommends all bills be paid
Is that recommendation made in the form of a motion?
in the form of a motion.
Is there a second to the motion? There is.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving disbursement of the funds for the general fund, recreation fund, and the capital fund in the figures mentioned by Councilman Davidson, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
That's all for finance this month. For personnel, there's no issues to talk about this month. And library, just some minor news. As I mentioned last month, the library is working on a building refresh. I mentioned last month the cost of that. I guess they're using the Speechel architect firm to do the design, and the price is actually going up. They made some changes to the building. It's now at about $2.2 million we're looking to raise. Apparently, as of tomorrow, Fran Shields, who is the illustrious chair of the library board, will be meeting with Speechel to work on the detailed design of that project. He also mentioned that next month they'll be starting a capital campaign for the library. So if anyone knows people who have a significant amount of cash that they are burning a hole in their pocket, they recommend they talk to the library and see if they can help get their name on a plaque in our brand new library, which I believe will be a vast improvement of the existing building, which has got some major problems. Other than that, I'll be meeting with the library board next week, and that's the end of my report.
If anyone have any questions for Councilman Derrickson?
I don't know.
I'm Davidson.
Davidson, I apologize. I'm flashback.
I just have a quick finance question. I don't know that it's to Mr. Davidson, but in the reorg meeting in January, we appointed Mr. Williamson as treasurer to the borough. I have yet to see him in any meetings, and I'm just wondering if we're changing the format, whether we're not asking the treasurer to attend monthly meetings anymore, or if something's differed, or if he's no longer willing to serve. I just want an update on his status, if we could. And also, it wasn't mentioned when we nominated him, what, if any, the salary is for a treasurer.
No, that's fine.
Yes, when we talked about the position with Mr. Williamson, as you know, he's given a lot of time to the borough, and we mentioned that because essentially the purpose of the treasurer is essentially to do what I just did, read the numbers off every month, pay the bills. We said that he could do that duty essentially without having to show up to meetings once a month.
Okay, and that would have been helpful to share with council when we nominated
Fair enough.
him, just
And
as
the
information.
salary is public knowledge. He gets paid $3,000 a year to be treasurer.
And so what does that involve for him to do that if he's not attending meetings?
He oversees all the check payments with Jeff Smith. He comes to all of our finance committee meetings and essentially oversees, he's essentially the person who signs all the checks.
Okay, great.
So it's a pretty big responsibility. He also, participates in the finance committee meetings, and he's working right now with Jeff to do some of this planning work with the future plan. I mentioned last month, and I'm going to say again, we're working right now on essentially putting aside money for all of our facilities, all of the infrastructure in the borough that we know has got scheduled maintenance. So this, for example, this building, which is now I think 15 years old, starting to show some wear. I see Mr. Lynn here in the audience, who just did an exceptionally good review of the building. A lot of money's going to have to go to maintain this building as well as all of our facilities, and we have the opportunity now with our capital budget to be able to put aside a certain amount and allocate that in a budget line item to make sure that when these items come up, new roof, what have you, drywall, anything that happens in these buildings, that we'll have the money available.
No, I understand
So
all
he's
that.
doing
I
the
was
best
just
one as
curious as to whether he was expected to attend meetings and whether expectations for that position had changed since traditionally Dr. DiCito was attending meetings when he was treasurer.
Correct. Yes, and I apologize that that didn't get communicated. I don't know when. All right, sorry.
That was it, thank you.
Okay.
And I can also offer that as serving on the finance committee, Mr. Williamson has attended meetings. Mr. Williamson knows the numbers probably as well as Mr. Smith, maybe even better, but that might be stretching the point. He is very involved with that committee. Does anyone else have any questions or points of discussion for Mr. Davidson? All right, then we will move to Councilwoman Borough, Recreation and Shade Tree.
Great, thank you. There are lots of recreation things coming up, and I hope you'll mark your calendars for as many as you can attend. The first is actually tomorrow night. It's the annual family dance. It begins at 6 o'clock and runs to 9 o'clock right here at the community center next door. Admission this year includes DJ entertainment, pizza, chicken fingers, salad, drinks, and dessert. Tickets will be available all evening at the door. Adults are $5 and children are $2. So feel free to, reach out to the borough office if you'd like any other information, or check the website, or just come to the door between 6 and 9 tomorrow night and have a lovely time with your family. The second is that there are discount Philadelphia Flower Show tickets available through the Recreation Board. They are being sold at $20. The Flower Show is the 4th to the 11th of March this year, so if you'd like to pick up discount tickets, I've already snagged some. You can reach out to the Recreation Office. Again, that number is at the Borough website, or you can call the Borough office directly, and they'll be happy to help you do that. I think they're going pretty quickly, so tune in if you can. And the next I'm not too familiar with, but it sounds like fun. It's a Hoopnautica workshop. The Recreation Board is offering a Hoopnautica workshop on Friday, March 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the community center. The cost is $10, and it is hoop dance, which apparently offers participants an outlet for creative expression as well as a great workout. You can burn between 460 and 600 calories per hour. No hoops or experience are necessary. So if you'd like to register, please call the Recreation Office again, and Paula will be more than happy to sign you up. And the last announcement for recreation is the Easter egg hunt and Easter bunny luncheon, which will be on Saturday, April 7th. This year, in tandem with its Easter bunny luncheon, the Recreation Committee is going to do an Easter egg hunt. There'll be a lot more details to follow. They're still working out all the fun stuff, but put that on your calendars for Saturday, April 7th. And that's all I have. Shade Tree has nothing to report tonight.
All right, very good. Does anyone have any questions or points of discussion for Councilwoman Rowe?
Just one question about the status of the discounted ski tickets.
I was checking the website today. It said they were still available, and there was the list. If you go on, the list is there. It has the dates and the locations where those ski tickets are available, and you can check the website, call the office, and talk to Paula, and she'll nurse you through.
Oh, very good. Unless anyone has any questions for Ms. Rowe, we will then proceed to Councilwoman Simpson, Properties, Economic Development, Fair Trade, and Farmers Market.
Thank you very much. Regarding properties, we are continuing the property committee to walk the properties for all the borough and properties. Recently, we did a walkthrough here with Mr. Lynn. We've also done a walkthrough with the Media Theater in the last week. And I want to thank Mr. Johnson for providing the Minchell House site inspection that was done last December, so we're up to speed with that. And we'll continue to assess and build a plan out for properties and what's needed and required. Any violations will, of course, request, or what we consider maybe potential violations, will request Jim Jeffrey to take a look at as well. Economic development, nothing to report this evening. Same with Fair Trade, other than they are still moving forward with their plans for October for Fair Trade Live 2. And the farmers market, our announcements there is that we're getting ready to bring in the vendors again. They're asking folks to please comply with the request if you're a vendor to get your information and licenses in order on time. And that really is all I have on my agenda for this evening.
All right, the spring can't be far away then. Does anyone have any questions or points of discussion for Councilwoman Simpson? Okay.
Thank you.
I will pass the gavel to Councilwoman Simpson. Community Development and Media Arts Council. I have one action item, and in connection with that, we have Mr. Lynn, who is in our audience, who I understand is going to give us a brief presentation.
Brief being the operative word.
Yes.
Thank you. I have the honor of representing yet another great project in Media Borough. It's a very small, new apartment building on Baltimore Pike, the 400 block east, which is about a half a block west of Providence Road on the south side. The way I refer to it, I still think of it as Sable Publications, but it's immediately to the left of Sable Publications. It's 2 units down, 2 units up, a parking space on the back served by World Street, an image which we're trying very hard to work within something in the borough, for those at home. This project is in both the HBO and the TND overlay district, which adds a challenge working with both ordinances. We have developed the project 100% with no variances. It's a zoning-free project. We have requested 6 waivers for the project, and I think we can discuss those, perhaps even the engineer briefly. The waivers are under the new subdivision land development ordinance, which just came to pass, as we know, between December and November, that quadrant. We're all working with the new ordinance to kind of feel it out and try to see, maybe it needs a little bit of fine tuning. We're trying to keep a list as we go forward. Project was very briefly reviewed by the Planning Commission January 4th. Considerable time with the engineer's office in the project, working with Mr. Jeffrey on the zoning. We also thank you, Steph. Also, council workshop reviewed the project on February 2nd. The Planning Commission once again reviewed it on February 7th with a brand new letter generated by Mr. Johnston. The letter recommended all points that have been raised in January were satisfied to their satisfaction, and also recommended 6 waivers be granted for specific reasons. Planning Commission recommended unanimously at the February meeting to recommend approval of the project for final land development. Also recommended all 6 waivers be granted, and in particular Kevin Madsen, the chair, as you know, was instrumental in writing the salary ordinance, so I was pleased to receive his blessing in that recommendation. That's about as brief as I can be, sir.
Well, I appreciate that. And just for orientation purposes of those people in the audience or at home, this is on the south side of East Baltimore, roughly opposite to where the old Media Inn was.
That's absolutely correct. In fact, in the little illustration I'm holding up, I'm looking at, I guess, the entrance exit to the coffee Starbucks location here, midway in the block. There's a very, very beat up residence sitting backward on the property that's being removed. And this is being developed right up on Baltimore Pike. Again, the TND overlay ordinance presents some unique challenges with the build-to line. This particular project, it works quite well. Some others we're in discussion, as you know, on whether it works or not. This one, it works very, very well.
And just again, for context, that property is remarkable for how unremarkable it is at present time. It's sort of it's like a smile with a tooth missing. That's what's on it at present time. It's a structure that's set back from the sidewalk and from the road.
Set back, set down, and rolling over, all 3.
Excuse me. I'm, based upon the planning commission's approval on this project, I'm prepared to make a motion that Borough Council grant or approve the final land development application for 432 East Baltimore Avenue. But before we vote on that motion, I'd like the borough engineer to weigh in on the nature of the waivers that were requested and that the Planning Commission has recommended that council grant.
Thank you. There are 6 waivers, and these are with the new subdivision land development ordinance, and I'll do this in a more of a summary type fashion. The first waiver is for any applicant shows any physical features within 100 feet of the property line, and being such a close-knit area, that's an awful lot of survey, quite expensive. There was one thing that we did request that the applicant do show, and that were fire hydrants, which he did show on the plan, and I believe that was even more than 100 feet.
I think it's about 200 feet.
So on that, and again, talking with the Planning Commission, these are items that the Planning Commission is going to take under advisement and potentially want to address and maybe revise some of the sound sections. Because of that, they did show features within 50 feet of the site. Second one is additional right-of-way. In the ordinance, it calls for widening the right-of-way to 50 feet. And because World Street, right at this point, is only about 15 feet wide all the way through, we thought that was very excessive to require the applicant widen that much. I believe he was going to lose 15–20% of the land if it was widened according to that.
Yeah, as well as if it continued down the street and everybody would lose all their
Everybody.
parking.
So, again, we looked at that, he's widened as far as he can to match the remaining properties along World Street. Third is a curb radius of a large 20 feet. Since it's so tight back there, it's not practical to have such a large radius, or, again, we agree with the request to reduce that. There's also what's called curb reveal. And if you look at from the top of the asphalt to the top of the curb, in the ordinance has 8 inches. Anybody has a low, small car parking next to a curb, you go to open your door, it can scrape the bottom of the curb. The applicant's requested to go to 6 inches, and we agree with that in this case. Sidewalks on both sides of the existing building. The sidewalk on the front of East Baltimore Avenue is staying and is compliant. But the sidewalks along the side of the building that go from 5 feet to 4 feet?
From 4 feet to 3 feet.
4 feet to 3 feet. And also, Mr. Lynn has also made a statement that these sidewalks will still be ADA compliant, which is very important when it goes to the next step for building plans. The last one is a sidewalk along World Street and back. Again, there's no other sidewalks along the street. It's pretty flat. Anybody could basically walk out and continue to walk down the street. It's not a problem. We recommend that last waiver. Again, 6 waivers. These were discussed at the Planning Commission, and I do know the Planning Commission will take these under advisement to look and potentially revise the ordinance to meet some of the other conditions within the borough.
Do you, Mr. Johnson, have any condition that you'd like to place on this application?
No.
All right. Well then, I move for approval of the final land development application of 432 East Baltimore Avenue and the granting of the 6 waivers as outlined by the borough engineer. Is there any?
Excuse me, are there any questions for President Johnson? We have a motion and a second. Call the vote. All in favor of granting the land development application with the waivers under condition having been met, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
I thank you. And I don't think everybody at home realizes how much time the solicitor, the engineer, the planning commission, the council, the zoning officer, Mr. Smith spend on these applications. They don't happen overnight. This is about a 3-month process minimum, sometimes as much as 5 or 6 months, and then of course they have to end. The point being is a lot of effort. These aren't done randomly. There's a lot of time and engineering and review process, and everybody spends time working them out. And when you're done, if it's done correctly, you have a really good winning project. So I just think it's hard for those sitting at home to realize the effort everybody puts into it. My editorial for the evening.
If I may offer my own editorial comment, I think it's a fine project, but I also like to commend the applicant and Mr. Lynn on this particular application because he was kind of left-footed. He's smiling. The plans are drawn up under the old Saldo ordinance, and right before you presented, we adopted a new Saldo ordinance. But thank you very much for your flexibility in working with that situation such that we have what promises to be a nice project for the borough.
No problem. I never mind being poster child. Thank you.
Good job, Bob.
I do not have any other action items for tonight. I have 2 announcements. One is a repeat from last month. It is with regard to the Media Film Festival. The 5th Annual Media Film Festival will take place this coming Thursday through Saturday. Tickets are available online through the MediaArtsCouncil.org website. Please get them sooner than later because this event does sell out. If I may recommend a couple of events within the larger film festival. On Saturday, there are a couple of workshops, and those might be of particular interest to folks. If I may, and my eyes permit, Saturday afternoon at 12:30, there is a workshop, a 2-hour workshop, how to craft a story, the fundamentals of screenplay writing. So any person who has an interest in screenplay writing, I recommend that you attend. And then following that, these are both at the community center, is a presentation called A Short Yet Funny History of the Movies. That one's of particular interest to me. It's being presented by a lecturer from Yale University, and it's going to show a full range of clips and classic films that are intended to give folks a greater appreciation of the film as art. So next Thursday through Friday, please come out. I assure you'll have a good time. Last item I have also is an announcement. Excuse me. And it is with regard to the Global Connect notification system. This is a system that's available in the borough. If you sign up, you will receive notifications of certain events. At present, the events are emergency in nature, and council might look to expand the scope of that in the future. But at the present time, I urge anyone in the borough to go on the borough website and look for the police, I think it's the police section. And if you click on that, it will pull up the Global Connect notification application. And I urge everyone in the borough to apply because this is instrumental to getting the word out if there are emergencies, pending emergencies. And potentially, it could be something that is used in order to notify borough residents of important events throughout town. So I encourage you to, if you haven't already, to sign up for the Global Connect notification system.
Mr. President, can we make a comment about that?
Of course.
Just in the event you haven't heard it, the Global Connect is used to connect and make phone calls to people. So whether it's a landline, you can put in your landline number. It was initiated to make sure we reach all the folks that don't use cell phones or may not have internet access, but you can also put in your cell phone numbers. If you are someone who have children living far away, they can actually sign up and put their phone numbers in so they can be alerted when their family has emergencies here. So as President Hall said, please go, make it the most of what we have by soliciting and putting your number in, and we promise that any calls will be very timely and sensitive. We do have the ability to drill down to a specific area, streets, blocks, so if it's something such as a water main break or something like that, rather than a full notification, we can reach the people who just need to know on a need-to-know basis. So please take advantage of what we can do with that. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I can just add, is it, Mr. Smith, is it possible for those who don't have internet access, if you want to be on the system, can they, since we're appealing to those who don't have internet access as well, can they call your office?
Yes.
And get on the list as well? So just those who don't have internet access, just call Borough Hall.
I apologize.
No worries.
We were just so used to having Mr. Smith here that we don't always recognize that not everyone realizes what a wonderful resource he is. And of course, you may come to the borough offices and you can request to get signed up there.
Any further questions for President Hall?
Thank you, Vice President Simpson. All right, so let's move on to Dr. Stein. Technology, Media Business Authority, and Environmental Advisory Council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. We'll take those in order. In terms of the information technology, we are in the process of soliciting for network administration services. So, Mr. Smith, that is still open?
Yep, till tomorrow at 4:30.
Okay, so we have another day until 4:30. So if we are still open for looking for providers for network administration services, as you know, the borough will go out and solicit for services, just to remain competitive and get the best prices possible for the borough. So we're in the process of doing that. A number of our projects, actually upcoming this year, will require the assistance of a network administrator. So we will look forward to having that We are in progress with an IT, really operational and strategic plan with a number of projects on there. But we would like to have this resource in place to, work with us on those projects. So that's where we are moving at this point with IT. Ken, did you want to add anything? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to announcements from the MBA. The MBA, just a quick one, completed works. This is a little bit old, but just a recap of the last major event was the Chinese New Year's celebration, and that was again, thanks to Margaret Rose and Merrill Hospital for their support on that. And I believe that the goal is to, according to their last meeting, is maybe move that event to a different day next year. In terms of works in progress, I'm really excited that the MBA is working with both the Borough and the EAC on trash and recycling. They are taking the initiative to put together a survey of the current businesses in the downtown district to look at their recycling and trash patterns, and then we're looking at some tiered pricing. They are looking at some tiered pricing, so we hope to have more announcements on it. They meet next week, and so I expect there'll be more information on that forthcoming at the next legislative meeting. But I'm excited by that because I think it shows good cooperation between the MBA and the EAC and Council on just making the downtown as attractive as possible in terms of these two issues, and also, I mean, at the very least, being in compliance with law and our local ordinances in terms of both trash and recycling. So we're very happy that they're doing that. They're also researching some digital kiosk options. We've been in discussion with that and continuing to gather data on digital billboards as well. So, as well as ongoing promotional activities. So that is the gist of that. In terms of the EAC, the EAC is each year updates its also is continuing this process with recycling and a trash pickup. We've been in contact with them and trying to make the both businesses and residents and their outreach function aware of that, and so that educational initiative is underway. We also have one of the projects that they're pursuing too is an anti-idling kind of initiative, whereby they are looking into putting up educational signs to remind residents and visitors not to idle your cars because it wastes a lot of energy and puts pollution into the air. So they are in the process of putting those together. They're also looking into some weatherization initiatives for the on behalf, trying to raise awareness and education around weatherization and trying to point residents in the direction of resources towards that end. And that's again, over the next few months, they will be putting together their full plan on that. Also recently, they did produce, the EAC produced their annual report, which I believe it's either on the website or can be obtained from that committee. Has a complete list of all their projects completed over the following year, the previous year. So if you're interested in their activities, I encourage you to either attend one of their meetings or to request that this document. It was produced by the EAC. The chair of that is Walter Kressler, who's done a great job. Okay. My next item is an item, and again, I want to thank the council for this is an item that has been ongoing for the better part of a year. It's kind of morphed into providing really an orientation packet for, it's common practice in businesses and organizations to provide some sort of orientation for incoming members and it's not uncommon for that to be done through HR. We have something like that for the borough staff, but we never had anything for that as an incoming council person. And so, again, based on some feedback provided, again, through all members of council, this is morphed into a project where I've put together a set of documents that I think help us to do our job better. So I'd like to make a motion. I'm going to put forth the motion in that regard. And the motion reads as follows. I move that the borough adopt the policy of providing the following documents to all elected officials prior to or upon taking office, and they would include the Pennsylvania Borough Code, the Borough Code of Ethics, the Professional Conduct Policy, which was produced in 2010 by the solicitor, the leadership guidelines for elected officials that were included all changes received as of the last workshop on February 2nd, and then those changes are completed on February 3rd. Robert's Rules of Order, the Sunshine Act, duties and functions of Borough Council per Borough Code, and a summary of board commissions and duties and functions. And that all elected officials receive a copy of these documents and acknowledge written receipt of said documents. So that is in the form of the motion.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Mr. President, and I do apologize. I was out of town on business today at the caucus meeting or the workshop meeting, so I was not able to attend. I think the documents of Dr. Stein referenced our outstanding resources for any newly elected official. However, I do not see where it is beneficial to create a policy that is, one, unenforceable due to the fact that each of us are elected officials, and the only policies in which we're required to work under are that of state statutes and the Borough Code. I would encourage us to provide this documentation to all elected officials when they come on, so that they do have some information that might be able to assist them. But to have this council feel that we are the ones that are able to adopt this policy for future councils, I question that, were prior councils not doing their job and now we need these documents, as well as the fact that to have this piece of paper where we have a checklist where we're certifying that we received these documents are somewhat, I think, referencing almost a childish act of, we have to make sure that you show us that you've done your homework and you've signed off on it. I would encourage us and the borough to hand these out to all newly elected officials, but to create a policy that is just a policy that is not enforceable and nothing can be done with it. I would rather just see us be as a group that can say, hey, you know what? Here's some information we got elected, it'll help, but it's not policy. You don't have to sign anything. So it is my intent this evening to vote no against this agreement, or policy, excuse me.
Is there any other comments or discussions on the motion?
Yes, if I could, I do wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Robinson. I think that, and I think originally this might have been Councilperson Rohorik's idea to put the orientation packet together. I think it's a great idea. I don't think that certifying receipt and all that kind of stuff is necessary. I think they're great resources. One in particular, though, that I'm very much opposed to in its current form and probably philosophically in any form are the leadership guidelines for elected officials. I was not able to be at the workshop meeting in January where I think you all discussed it. I did read the meeting notes from that night. It looked like it was discussed and council was invited to make comments, which is great. We very briefly touched on this particular item the other night at workshop, and I specifically asked the question, are we discussing the content of the guidelines, or are we discussing the packet? The answer was we were discussing the packet. I love the packet. I kind of hate the idea of the guidelines being in the packet. If there's a way to make the form of a motion, number one, I don't even know that this I'm not sure, solicitor, why this would require any kind of policy or motion to give away an orientation packet. I don't know why that has to be a legislative issue. If it is, that's great. But I would ask for the courtesy to defer the content of the leadership guidelines until we can discuss that further and maybe come to some kind of consensus. I'm not sure that I'm the only person who has some questions or issues with it, or if it has to be in and you're not willing to amend, as a courtesy, you're not willing to amend the motion, then that set of guidelines can be removed or amended at any time per council.
If I may
Majority.
address,
I think before you address that, I'd like some clarification from Councilwoman Rowe. I think I've heard a couple of things there. Are you making a motion to table?
No, I'm asking maybe just as a courtesy that this could be amended to just not require that the leadership guidelines be a part of this particular packet. I guess first the question to Mr. Scott is, do we need legislation or to make a motion at all just to hand people orientation packets? It just seems like a housekeeping issue.
Yeah, it's not legislation because it is in the form of a motion, not a resolution or an ordinance. If the idea is to set this up on a regular basis, I would think you'd need a motion to do that. Anybody could hand out what they want to anybody around the table tonight, but if the idea is to make this a recurring standard thing, then I think the motion.
Okay, and that's fine. But I just very strongly feel that the guidelines need to be discussed in much more depth, certainly more than we could do tonight. I think it requires some time at a workshop maybe. And I wasn't under the impression that those guidelines, the content of the guidelines tonight would be part and parcel of this packet. So I'm just asking you as a courtesy if that could be removed for now and certainly added to the packet later if we all agree on a standardized version of it.
Let me make sure that I understand what you are requesting. Are you requesting that among the materials, that Dr. Stein has specified, that one of those materials, the leadership guidelines, is something that you would wish at this time not to include in the motion?
Correct.
All right, so Dr. Stein, are you willing to amend your motion in that fashion?
well, I'd like to address both the comments. One, and thank you for both of you in terms of your feedback. With regard to signing off, this is common policy. It's not childish policy. It's policy in almost every major corporation in the world, and almost every major institution in the world, to simply be given materials. There's nothing unusual about this. There's nothing childish. There's nothing extraordinary about it. It just simply says, I've received them. There's nothing more to it. There's, in terms of enforcement, there is no enforcement necessary. It just simply says, I received them, and you sign off. I'm not sure I understand the concern there. There's no issue for enforcement, and there's nothing extraordinary in that. It just says, hey, I received these, and that. With regard to, so I would hope that we can move forward with this. I don't think it's absolutely necessary I think if we are enacting a policy, I'm trying to think of ways that we can help future generations of council people. And I think based on the discussions, and the minutes would show this, based on the discussions at previous workshops around this, and I thank Monica for suggesting, in fact I have an email that she suggested some of these documents. And I thought that was an excellent idea. I thought it was a good way to put this whole piece together. There was actually, in the minutes show, there was general agreement at the previous workshop that all of these documents, including the leadership guidelines, were useful documents to have. I may remind all of us that for the new council, the leadership guidelines have been around since January 1. And for the previous council members, which includes Ms. Rowe, they've been around for almost a year, and I've been asking for feedback both in written form, in verbal form. The minutes can show, we can go back through the minutes over the last 6 months, and this topic is not a new one. It has come up, ample time has been requested, and I've waited and received very useful feedback. I've implemented that feedback, and I'm not sure why we would continue to even waste more time on this. I think it's a very simple thing. I think we should move on with it. That being said, I'm very happy. I'm recommending that we move forward with adopting the policy, but I'm happy if council would like to consider implementing any changes or revisions to amend any of these documents, to subtract or add documents, or to change any of these documents. in any form, I'm open to that, and we can certainly do that by amendment. I'm really asking for you to move forward with a policy of providing this set of documents as is, as kind of moving this ball along. And then any other changes that to be made to the leadership guidelines, I'm happy to make, and we can amend those by amendment. I just would like us to move on with this.
No, I understand that, and I appreciate it, and I do know that this has been kicked around for a while, but it's certainly not been at the forefront for quite a long time, other than the last 2 months. I'm going to vote no against this because the leadership guidelines as they stand now to me are nothing that I would ever even acknowledge, or I just wouldn't have any part of it. So, and that can change, and we can talk about it, and I know it'll be an interesting discussion going forward, but I am just, for the record, I'm very much in favor of the packet. I'm very, very much against, and will vote against the entire thing because of the guidelines as they are stated now.
All right, well, many points have been well made. I will ask Dr. Stein again, though, whether he wishes to have his motion stand as is, or whether he would amend his motion at the present time.
I'd like to move it as is.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions or wish to discuss this matter any further?
Let me make one more comment, I do apologize. Dr. Stein keeps referencing that this is policy in corporations. I think it's important to clarify, A, this is not a corporation, it's a government. B, we're not employees of the borough. We are the elected officials of the borough, and the residents of the borough are the ones that make decisions regarding who sits at this table and how they sit, or what they wear, or how they discuss. I will go again on record. I think every one of these documents, even leadership guidelines, are fantastic sources of information for a newly elected official. I see no reason for this to be a in-stone policy when the only people that can uphold this policy are the residents. If they so desire that they do not like an elected official, that elected official will not be re-elected. So I would once again encourage that, we take a look at this, use these as a packet that is provided to newly elected officials, and leave it at that. It does not need to be a policy. This borough has been around for well over 150 years. I could not name or count the number of elected officials that have served this borough, and I question why all of a sudden in 2012 there was this need for 8 or 9 documents to tell an elected official how to act in meetings, how to dress in meetings, how to present themselves, how what leadership roles are. I'm really not sure how else to explain it. I think as far as orientation information is fantastic. As far as the policy, maybe there were issues in the past. I don't know if those issues would be in the future, but I don't think we need a policy to tell elected officials how to sit at this table.
I thought that was part of our discussion too at the last workshop, is that we were not going to adopt this as formal policy.
Well, we have a motion that has been seconded, so I guess we're dealing with it now.
And I just want to clarify, the motion reads, I want to move that the borough adopt the policy of providing the following documents. We're not telling anyone how to do anything. We're just simply adopting a policy of providing the following documents.
I think we're
And
clear on that.
requiring us to certify that I have received these documents.
So let's just vote on it.
Well, one person at a time.
Sorry, that was good.
Vice President Simpson?
It seems in listening to back and forth, and I understand it, sometimes I think it is the dictionary that we all use, that we have different definitions for certain words, and it seems like we're stuck on the word policy, and stuck on the word certify, and I'm wondering if you would modify that so that instead of certifying we acknowledge that we've received the information,
Absolutely.
and that we realize that the practice of council members receiving this rather than a policy, so it does not sound like it's legislative action regarding each individual. Some of these code of ethics we are required already to complete. So I can understand that there may be some different inferences, but in general, if I understand correctly, your goal was to assure that all of us had access to the information provided in a packet, whether we're newly elected, whether we've been here 6 years, whether we, that it's just, it's a practice that we would be given this information at the beginning of terms if we didn't have it.
Yes.
Do we need to require an acknowledgement signature at all? Can't we just hand people a packet? Why do you have to sign up for it?
Doesn't
Well,
need to
you
be,
don't.
and doesn't need to
Right,
be a
this
policy.
doesn't-
But I'm saying you don't.
Oh, I know,
An
I'm just
individual
saying,
can
does it-
decline, but
does it-
it's,
What's the advantage of having this signature on it, I guess?
It's a very good question.
These are good questions, but we have a motion before us,
And I amend the motion to certainly just say I acknowledge having received.
as opposed to I certify.
Yeah, I have no problem with that amendment.
I do have a question for the solicitor. You were asked a question about adopting a policy and what would be required, or what you thought was, what you recommended. We do, in order to adopt the policy. If it is a practice, does your advice change?
I'm not
Put you on
sure,
the spot tonight.
I'm not sure I understand. the
We thought this
distinction.
was an easy one.
I don't really understand this. I mean, if the idea is that this happens in the future.
Is there a
beyond
legal
tonight.
definition difference between is there a legal definition difference between a policy and a practice that we adopt as a borough?
No, again, if you wanted this to recur more than on a regular basis, not just tonight, I think it needs to be a vote.
Okay.
If the idea is to set something in motion that happens
Can I ask-
automatically in the future.
Can I ask you another piece? Is there a legal definition difference between I certify that I've received something and I acknowledge that I've received something?
I think that certify is it probably is, I don't know that I can tell you what the difference is.
I think it is a legal word of art, and there
Yeah.
is a provision under state law. I don't recall the number, the actual site to that, but it is, the distinction is that if you so certify it is untrue, you could be subject to penalty.
Certainly in a verification where it states that, where it says that.
Correct.
Maybe, but I don't know that that would be the case here, but.
So, I mean,
But
again,
certifies no longer on the table, so.
Correct.
I think amended it to read acknowledgement. And by the way, I did discuss wording with the solicitor to make sure this is in keeping with standard policy.
Mr. Solicitor, what happens if becomes policy and the one does not acknowledge the policy and will return
I don't
this
think
guy?
that there can be a penalty for that. I mean, if you're,
So we've sat here for 20 minutes, going to vote on a policy that there's no ramifications for.
I think that if you don't sign it, there's no ramifications. There's, as
So
you said, as you said, I mean,
it's a feel-good policy.
there's as you said, you're elected officials, if you had a policy applicable to your employees and they don't sign something, you have to do something about that. But as to elected officials, there is no ramification.
All right, I think that we've had, as Councilman Robinson has pointed out, we've had more than perhaps the fair share of discussion on this motion. So I will call the question. All those in favor of adopting this policy or practice, providing various documents as outlined by Dr. Stein to new council members, and requesting that they acknowledge that they've received those materials. Those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
No.
Mr. Smith, will you please poll council?
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowe?
No.
Mrs. Simpson?
yes?
Dr. Stein?
Yes.
Mrs. Reborg?
No?
Mr. Robinson?
No.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-3.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Does anyone have any questions or points of discussion for Dr. Stein? All right, we will now turn to Councilwoman Borough, Health and Historic Architecture Review Board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing for health, for Media Archives or Media Historic Society this evening. However, I do have one point of legislation, would be the appointment of someone, a realtor, to the HARB Board, the Historical Architectural Review Board. I believe that there were two people that were vying for the same position. However, according to David Erfler, who is the chair of the HARB organization, has let me know that there is one person in particular that they would prefer, let's say, for that position, and that would be for Christine Sudolnik, who is a realtor who does not have to live in or have to reside in media to be part of the HARB board, who has extensive knowledge of historical review boards. So I would do that in the form of a motion to accept the appointment of Christine Sudolnik to the HARB board.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? I have a quick question for you, Monica. Did either you or somebody on the HARP discuss or meet with Mr. Holden?
I believe that's how you pronounce her name, yes, Sudolnik. Yes, actually, David Erfler actually did. He made several phone calls to all the applicants. Some people who had made an initial application have rescinded their application due to time constraints and work and whatnot. But he did interview quite a number of people that did make application and came in for these two.
And based upon his recommendation, you're making this motion
Yes.
tonight? Okay, very good. Any other questions or points of discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All those in favor of appointing Christine Zaholik to a, I'm sorry, how many year term is it? Five-year term on the Historic Architecture Review Board, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes.
And if it's possible, I don't know if this is the right way to go about this, but if we can send a letter to the other applicants to this, to say that in light of future expirations of terms, we can keep their applications possibly on file if they so choose, and that we can notify them in the future of the terms that are expiring.
I think it's a good suggestion. Mr. Smith, is that something we can do?
It's something we can do, we have to.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you. And that's all I have for this evening.
Any questions or points of discussion for Councilwoman Hart? All right, not hearing any. We'll move on then to Councilman Robinson, Public Safety, Public Works and Infrastructure, Fire, and the Third Street Project Committee, or Subcommittee.
Good evening. Thank you. We'll get through with the legislative portions first. On the agenda this evening is an agreement for the borough to enter in with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to be a participant for the purchase of road salt for the 2012-2013 year. And I would make that in a form of a motion.
Second.
Is a motion made and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion or questions on the motion?
For clarification, this is something the borough has been entering into for several years. Prior to working with the Commonwealth, the local communities worked together, and the director of highway determined that working with the Commonwealth was actually a cheaper way in which we can obtain our road salt.
This is not something new under the sun.
Exactly.
All right. All those in favor of...
One short question. Do you have any idea, based on the fact that we've had very little snow and there's been probably very little use of road salt this year, do we stockpile it? Do we have a surplus? Will we have a surplus next year? Are we buying the same amount? How does that work?
I cannot tell you the way things are working currently. I know that historically that we would have a quote-unquote stockpile here, but then due to the fact that all municipalities have limited storage capacity, that we would then continuously get salt from the state. I would use logic that say that, in a winter like this, that there is a significant amount of salt, knock on wood, that will remain for the next year. And if does that make a difference to pricing? I really could not tell you, but I know that the state is the one that stockpiles. Jeff, are you aware of any historical data that, if you have a mild winter, the next year the salt prices drop?
Yes, essentially, with the agreement, we are required to purchase 120 tons, and we're guaranteed a maximum of 280. So as you point out, if we have a mild winter, then we only have to purchase 120 tons, and then we can go up to 280, we're guaranteed if we have a harsh winter. So essentially, we have 2 bays down in the highway yard that we stockpile salt, and Ralph, having done this for 40 years, even if it's a mild winter, he'll buy the amount that we're required and just stockpile it, hold it at the shop in the event that we get some freak storm or something and salt becomes, it's tough to get. He's got it sitting there. So in my opinion, he manages it very well, and depending on mild versus a more harsh winter, but the agreement gives us the flexibility of 120 to 280 max, and we actually, just for everyone to be aware, we pay $56.08 a ton. So it's a very, as Mr. Robinson pointed out, we've done it both ways over the years, and Mr. DeRosa is comfortable with the state contract and the price of $56.08, which is very, very reasonable in his opinion.
Any other questions or points of discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion for the Borough Media to participate in the road salt contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
And next on the agenda would be a mass gathering permit for the Town Talk newspapers art exhibition and craft fair, which will be held Sunday, June 3rd, 2012. I'd make a motion that we approve the mass gathering permit as submitted.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions concerning the motion? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor of granting the mass gathering permit for Town Talk newspapers, media, art exhibition, and craft fair, Sunday, June 3, 2012, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously.
And last, as far as legislation this evening, would be the RACP grant. That is a grant agreement for the Borough of Media Water and Safety Infrastructure Redevelopment Assistance Capital Project. That is basically the grant in which we are looking to obtain through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That would be going towards the 3rd Street project. If I remember right, the grant itself at the maximum dollar amount would be $680,000. With that, I would make a motion that...
Correction, that's 650.
600, pardon me?
I think it's 650.
$650,000. And with that, I make a motion that the borough enter into the agreement for the RACP grant agreement, and would also ask if the solicitor had anything more to...
Not at this point.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that's been paired with a second. Is there any discussion or questions on the motion? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the borough executing the RACP grant agreement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Other information this evening, the 3rd Street project, the CAC, they continue to meet on a weekly basis. I am very excited to see that the meetings have been extremely well attended by residents throughout the borough. The meetings are start on 6 o'clock on Monday evenings, and I have seen anywhere between 15 and 25 people, so I'm very impressed with the residents that are coming out. But I'm also more impressed with the CAC committee as a whole. They have gotten into extreme detail with regards to their charge, but also recognize that their responsibility truly is to get their fingers on the pulse of the residents of the borough as well as our business district. So I do applaud them. They are in the process of putting together a survey that will be going out to all media residents. Please look for it in your mail. There's numerous discussions regarding how the survey will be conducted, and as we discussed this evening, some people still do not use the internet, don't like computers, and so in order to ensure that we provide the survey to everyone, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. And that's a U.S. mail, fill it out, and then return it, and we'll tabulate the findings. So I would truly encourage all residents, when they receive it, to take the 3 or 5 minutes to fill it out, and throw it back in the mail. Also, at the beginning of the meeting this evening, Stephanie was so kind to let everyone know about a hearing, or not a meeting, not a hearing, I apologize. That will be March 5th here at Borough Hall. More than likely, it will be held in the community room, which is next door to the Borough Council Chambers. It will be starting at 7 o'clock at night, and it will provide several different options with regards to the Third Street project. I would encourage all residents to come out to provide input, as well as to obtain a greater understanding as to the depth of the project. That's it for the CAC. Fire report, EMS calls for the month of January were 147. Fire calls were at 49. One other piece of information that I received from the chief today is his father, Ed Gibson Jr., after 58 years of serving this community, not sitting behind a desk like we do, but getting up in the middle of the night when it's 12 degrees outside and going to fight a fire, is a man that we all need to applaud and look up to, admire. We all, all of us that have volunteered for anything from Little League coaching to Girl Scouts, look at our volunteerism. But 58 years, he has probably served in every capacity of the firehouse 2 or 3 or 4 times in his career. I am sure that this council and our fire department will recognize him much more than I am this evening. But when I saw that bit of information, it made me take a step back. Besides being an outstanding firefighter, he's just a heck of a great guy and a true asset to our community, not as a firefighter, but as a resident and neighbor. So he is going to be sorely missed. A couple other little items that I just wanted to bring up. Last week, or last month, we did have our first snow, as minimal as it was. I did see numerous properties, residential properties as well as business properties, that did not take the time and effort to remove the snow from their sidewalks. We all understand that there is an ordinance that there is a requirement for that, but where I'm looking this evening is I'm asking that the residents recognize that, a borough is different than a township. I mean, in a borough environment, we truly depend on each other. And as the old adage says, the weakest link in the chain is just that. You could have 50 neighbors all go out and shovel their driveway or shovel their sidewalks, and when you have that one resident or one neighbor that does not, it now means you really can't get from point A to point B. So besides the ordinance that the borough does have, I think it's more important that everyone remember that it's your neighbor, and it's very important that everybody depend on each other and get out there and take care of your sidewalk, and the other person will take care of theirs, and hopefully that will make sure that everyone can walk around the borough and get to where they need to get. And I just really want to stress that. Last on the agenda this evening came from Mr. Jeffries from our emergency management group in the borough. There is a new organization that is called the MRC, and it is the Medical Reserve Corps. And I just hope that the County of Delaware is pleased to join in an exciting national initiative geared towards encouraging individuals to volunteer to assist during public health events. The Medical Reserve Corps, MRC, is a branch of the Citizen Corps and offers medical professionals and other non-medically qualified volunteers the opportunity to receive training and to be part of a team to support a broad range of emergency/disaster responses to help our fellow citizens within the county. I would encourage anyone that finds that interesting to go on to the website, which is www.medicalreservecorps.gov, or you could contact an Ed Klein at 610-892-8134. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I have
For
one for Mr.
for the
Robinson.
discussion for Councilman Robinson?
Mr. Robinson, did Mr. Gibson retire?
I don't have the exact email, but I believe he said yes, he's finally retired.
Okay, thanks.
Now, the other factor is, we all know Ed Gibson Jr., there's a very good chance that after he retires for 6 months, he's gonna get bored and come right back on the truck.
I just wanted to make sure, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
No. Retired.
Thank you.
Thank
Anyone
you
else-
for
Anyone
that
else have any
clarification.
questions or points for our discussion for
Just
Councilman
one
Robinson?
point, Mr. President, and Mr. Robinson, just on the CAC, on the Third Street project, I believe that public meeting will be televised as well as being here, but we encourage people to come in person, but those who can't come in person, the borough is making provision to have that televised as well.
Thank you.
And Mr. Smith, do we know the channels? I don't have cable, so I don't know these things.
Yeah, Channel 10 for Comcast subscribers and Channel 42 for Verizon subscribers.
So channel 42 for Verizon subscribers and channel 10 for Comcast subscribers.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dr. Stein. Any other points of discussion for Councilman Robinson? Just to amplify something that Councilman Robinson said about snow removal. This year we've been blessed with low snowfall, depending on what side you are in the great 15-year-old divide. But if you're younger, you tend to think of snow differently. But although it is true that there are some people throughout the borough who have failed to remove the snow from their sidewalks, sometimes that's because they have physical disabilities. So in neighborly gesture, if you see one of your neighbors hasn't, this is common sense, hasn't removed the snow from their walk, just give them a call or knock on the door and find out what's going on. All righty. I think we're now moving to public comment, and, oh, that's right, I apologize. April 14th is a date with some significance. Mr. Mayor, would you?
Well, we'd
fill us
like
in?
to renew our annual green-up, April 14th, Councilman Robinson and I talked about. This would be trying to put together as many volunteers, hi Stephanie, as we can to clean up and have experience doing it, but also bring some new people in. And usually it's a Saturday morning, it's the day before Super Sunday, and we break people up into different areas. Paul and I, probably more Paul, will ride around with Ralph to make sure that we're covering areas that he would not otherwise be doing. The entrances to town probably need some work. And he would provide all the supplies on that Friday, so he does not have to come in Saturday, but they'll be surprised. So anyway, there's a lot of areas in town that are away from what the highway department usually does that need a lot of work. So as many volunteers as we could get, we would like. Stephanie, I know you've been working on volunteers for quite a while, so we don't want it all to fall on you and the Frog organization, but we hope to get a lot of new people to come out and partake in this, because it is the beginning of the spring when we have a lot of events. I've talked to a number of people that have a lot of ideas.
And can we expect to get more details at next month's meeting?
Yes, we're just getting out ahead of it.
Excellent. So April 14th, put it on your calendar. Saturday, as I recall, it's some ungodly hour in the morning, 7:30.
Well, 6:30.
6:30.
No, 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, okay. Not so bad. 9 o'clock, and it is actually, believe it or not, it can be a fun time. You get to meet a lot of your neighbors and get a chance to socialize with them and do something that's good for your community. All right, so let us now shift to public comment and privilege of the floor. Anyone who wishes, please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address.
And it says, please speak into the microphone, which I do. Bob Diamond, immediate tax collector. I just want to let council know that today I closed the 2011 books, and tomorrow I'll be turning in 52 delinquent properties to the council, or to the county, for roughly $28,000. That's the bad news. The good news is I got about $61,000 today in 2012 taxes. But unfortunately, 52 properties get turned in tomorrow.
Mr. Tax Collector, can you tell us, out of 52, out of how many parcels?
Over 2,000. So it's not bad. And to be honest with you, the 28,000 is probably, this is my 11th year, and that's one of the lower ones. So the taxes were coming in. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Diamond? All right, anyone else wish to come forward and speak to council? I see no volunteers, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
You voted no?
No, that's it.
Oh.
Thank you very much. Say,
Sorry.
right now.
How are you?
Did you want this back?